Welcome to the Marketing Science Lab podcast, where we bridge the gap between complex academic research and real-world marketing applications. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sophie. Today, we're diving into a topic that's particularly relevant as we approach the holiday season, the psychology behind our reluctance to let go of possessions.
That's right, Sophie. Did you know that globally the number of self-storage units has exploded over the last decade? In fact, the self-storage industry is projected to reach $64.71 billion by 2026, growing at a CAGR of 5.45% from 2021 to 2026.
Wow, that's a staggering figure, Alex. It really highlights how much we're struggling with accumulation and decluttering. But what's driving this trend?
Well, that's exactly what we're exploring in today's episode. We'll be discussing a fascinating study that delves into the connection between loneliness and our reluctance to let go of used possessions. This research couldn't be more timely as we head into the holiday season, a time when many of us grapple with the accumulation of stuff.
I'm really excited about this one. Alex, can you give our listeners a brief overview of the study we're discussing?
Absolutely. The study we're diving into today is titled How Loneliness Affects Consumers' Reluctance to Let Go of Used Possessions, published in Psychology Marketing in 2024. It's a groundbreaking piece of research that offers some surprising insights into why we hold onto things we no longer use.
That sounds intriguing. What were some of the key findings?
Well, the researchers conducted 4 experiments to explore this relationship. The big takeaway is that lonely consumers are less willing to dispose of items they no longer use but might be useful to others compared to non-lonely individuals.
That's fascinating. Alex, it seems counterintuitive at first glance. You'd think lonely people might be more willing to part with possessions to make room for potential social connections.
You're right, it does seem counterintuitive, but that's what makes this research so interesting. The study found that loneliness actually increases our attachment to material possessions, which in turn makes us likely to let go of them.
So it's almost as if lonely people are using their possessions as a substitute for interpersonal relationships?
Exactly, the researchers suggest that lonely people may be more motivated to form connections with products to cope with their lack of social connection. It's a way of filling an emotional void.
That's a powerful insight, Alex. It really highlights how our emotional state can influence our consumer behavior, even when it comes to getting rid of things. But I'm curious, does this apply to all types of possessions equally?
That's a great question, Sophie. The study actually introduced a novel factor that moderates this effect, the relational meaning of a product.
Relational meaning. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. The researchers looked at whether the item was a gift from someone else or something the person bought for themselves. Interestingly, they found that for products gifted by others, lonely consumers were actually less attached to them and more likely to dispose of them compared to non-lonely consumers.
That's surprising. I would have thought gifts would hold more sentimental value, especially for lonely individuals.
It does seem counterintuitive at first. The researchers suggest that for lonely individuals, gifts might serve as reminders of unsatisfactory or ended relationship, prompting a desire to let go of these items.
That's really interesting. It seems like there's a complex interplay between loneliness, attachment, and the meaning we assign to our possessions.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the emotional aspects. There are real-world implications for this research, especially when we consider the growing trend of decluttering and the rise of the secondhand market.
Speaking of real-world implications, Alex, can you give our listeners some concrete examples of how this research might apply to their lives?
Of course, Sophie. Let's consider a hypothetical scenario. Imagine 2 people, Sarah and John. Sarah is feeling socially connected and fulfilled, while John has been experiencing loneliness lately.
Okay, I'm picturing them. Go on.
Both Sarah and John are doing some holiday cleaning and come across an old sweater they haven't worn in years. Based on this research, we might expect Sarah to be more willing to donate or sell the sweater, while John might struggle to part with it, even though he doesn't use it anymore.
That makes sense. And I suppose if the sweater was a gift, John might actually be more likely to get rid of it.
Exactly. If the sweater was a gift from an ex-friend or a relationship that didn't work out, John might be more inclined to let it go. It's all about the emotional associations we have with our possessions.
This research really sheds light on the complex relationship between our emotions, our possessions, and our willingness to declutter. As we head into the holiday season, what are some practical takeaways for our listeners?
Great question, Sophie. I think there are several actionable insights we can draw from this study. First, if you're helping someone declutter, be mindful of the emotional attachments they might have to their possessions, especially if they're experiencing loneliness. It's not just about the physical items, there's often an emotional component at play. Consider organizing group decluttering activities or donation drives. This combines the act of letting go with social interaction, which could be particularly beneficial for lonely individuals. When it comes to gift giving this holiday season, consider experiential gifts or consumables. These types of presents can reduce the accumulation of possessions that may be difficult to part with later. For sentimental items that are hard to let go of, try the take a picture strategy. Photographing an item before disposing of it can help preserve the memory without keeping the physical object. Finally, incorporate gratitude exercises into your decluttering process. This can help shift focus from material possessions to intangible values and relationships.
Those are fantastic suggestions, Alex. I can see how these strategies could be really helpful for anyone struggling with clutter, not just those experiencing loneliness. Do you have any specific tips for how our listeners can implement these strategies?
Absolutely, Sophie. Let's break it down a bit further. For group decluttering activities, you could organize a declutter party with friends. Everyone brings a few items they're considering getting rid of, and the group offers support and encouragement. This not only makes the process more fun, but also provides that crucial social interaction. When it comes to experiential gifts, consider things like concert tickets, day spa or relaxation retreats, cooking classes, or even a subscription to a streaming service. These gifts create memories or ongoing enjoyment without adding to physical clutter. For the take-a-picture strategy, you could create a digital memory book, take photos of sentimental items before donating them, and compile these images into a digital album. This way, you can revisit the memories associated with these objects without keeping the physical items. And as for gratitude exercises, try starting each decluttering session by writing down 3 things you're grateful for that aren't material possessions. This helps shift your mindset before you start sorting through items.
Those are such practical and actionable tips, Alex. I love the idea of a declutter party. It turns a potentially stressful task into a social event.
Exactly, and for businesses, there are implications too. For example, self-storage companies could partner with mental health organizations to provide resources on healthy attachment and decluttering. Retailers could promote experience gifts or donation in your name options as alternatives to traditional presents.
That's a great point about businesses, Alex. It seems like there's a real opportunity here for companies to align their marketing strategies with these insights. Can you elaborate on how businesses might leverage this research?
Certainly, Sophie. Let's consider a few examples. Secondhand marketplaces like eBay or ThreadUp could create marketing campaigns that emphasize the emotional benefits of letting go. They could frame the act of selling unused items as a way to make room for new experiences and connections. Decluttering services could train their staff on the psychological aspects of attachment to possessions. This would allow them to provide more empathetic and effective support to their clients, especially those who might be experiencing loneliness. Charities and donation centers could create campaigns that highlight how donated items can create new connections. For example, showing how a donated book might bring joy to a new reader could help people feel more connected through the act of giving. Home organization companies could develop products specifically designed to help people manage sentimental items. For instance, a memory box with compartments for photos and small keepsakes could help people pare down their possessions while still honoring their emotional attachments.
Those are brilliant ideas, Alex. It's fascinating to see how this research could inform not just individual behavior, but also business strategies and marketing campaigns.
Absolutely, Sophie, and it's worth noting that this research has implications beyond just the holiday season. As our society grapples with increasing rates of loneliness and environmental impact of overconsumption, understanding the psychological factors that drive our relationship with possessions becomes even more crucial.
You're right, Alex. This really ties into broader societal trends. Do you think this research might have implications for how we approach issues like sustainability and mindful consumption?
That's an excellent point, Sophie. I believe it does. When we understand the psychological drivers behind our reluctance to let go of possessions, we can develop more effective strategies for promoting sustainable consumption. For example, sustainability campaigns could focus on creating a sense of community and connection around reducing consumption. Instead of just emphasizing the environmental benefits, they could highlight how living with less can lead to more meaningful social connections.
That's a really interesting perspective, Alex. It seems like this research touches on so many aspects of our lives, from our personal relationships to our consumer behavior, and even our approach to sustainability.
Absolutely, Sophie. And I think that's what makes this research so valuable. It's not just about understanding why we hold on things, it's about gaining insight into our emotional needs and how they manifest in our behavior.
This has been such an enlightening discussion, Alex. As we wrap up, what's your key takeaway from this study?
I think the main takeaway is that our relationship with our possessions is far more complex than we often realize. As marketers and consumers, understanding the link between loneliness and our attachment to possessions offers valuable insights. It allows us to develop more compassionate and effective strategies for decluttering gift giving and creating meaningful connections.
Beautifully said, Alex. To our listeners, as you navigate the holiday season, remember that the true value of possessions often lies in the memories and connections they represent, not in the items themselves.
That's right. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by clutter, remember that letting go can sometimes be a path to greater emotional freedom and well-being. It's not about getting rid of everything, but about being mindful of what we choose to keep and why.
Excellent point, Alex. Before we close, let's remind our listeners of some key actions they can take based on today's discussion. Be mindful of your emotional state when decluttering. If you're feeling lonely, you might find it harder to let go of items. Consider the relational meaning of your possessions. Items that remind you of positive relationships might be worth keeping, while those associated with negative experiences might be easier to let go. Try organizing a decluttering party with friends to make the process more social and enjoyable. When gift giving, consider experiences or consumables that create memories without adding to physical clutter. Practice gratitude for non-material aspects of your life to help shift focus away from possessions.
Those are great reminders, Sophie. And remember, listeners, if you're struggling with decluttering or feeling overwhelmed by possessions, it's okay to seek help. Whether that's from friends, family, or even professional organizers or therapists, support is available.
Absolutely, Alex. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Marketing Science Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
And remember, you can find show notes and additional resources on our website at marketingsciencelab.org. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep decluttering.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, sometimes letting go of possessions can mean making room for new experiences and connections.